So game one here, we'll start with the Delver player on the play. 7 cards apiece as we will get started with the match.
Something else problematic for Bastecki game one here. A lot of creature removal that's not very effective. You see a Fork Bolt, 4 copies of Lightning Bolt. There's issues with dead cards.
All right, so Alex will lead the game on a Gitaxian Probes. We see what kind of he's up against in his control opponent. For Shvachkin, it's a deck with a lot of late game. He has 2 copies of Snapcaster Mage, 2 dual lands, a Terminus, a Sensei's Divining Top, and a Force of Will.
And this is a hand that is really leaning on Sensei's Divining Top Resolve, and there's going to be some fireworks over this card on the first turn of the game. Alex is going to counter if he can, and don't be surprised to see Shvachkin Force of Will back. This hand is a little bit on the slow side, but with Sensei's Divining Top, it becomes very, very powerful.
Land from Alex Bastecki, but there's no 1-drop, which has got to be seen as a win for Gabriel.
It is possible that he's holding up Spell Pierce, though, in this spot. Remember, deck lists are public.
Gabriel will play a Sensei's Divining Top. See Alex cross it off. Now, we'll see if a fight is over it like you predicted. There is not. Now, were there a fight? Gabriel on his turn actually drew a 2nd copy of Sensei's Divining Top.
Right, so this actually works out all right for Alex, because the worst case scenario is you expend a lot of Force of Wills trying to fight over the Sensei's Divining Top. The Miracles player simply has another one, and now you're without a Force of Will, down a lot on cards, and the Miracles player still has a top to show for it.
All right, with top on the board, we pass back over to Alex. Doesn't have a threat as of yet. He'll pay 2 mana for Young Pyromancer. He knows that there is a Force of Will in Gabriel's hand. We'll see if Gabriel wants to spend it, and he does. He pitches one of his 2 copies of Snapcaster Mage to take care of the 2-1.
And Shvachkin, I'm sure, is happy to cash in this Force of Will on any reasonable threat. Also, not really going to be inclined to play around Daze in this spot, because Alex didn't Daze the Sensei's Divining Top on the first turn, which he almost certainly would have if he had Daze.
Now, Alex does counter back, though. He did have a copy of Force of Will, which he pitched Brainstorm to. And this is an interesting tactic from Alex, which I'm interested about, because he had a Force of Will plus blue card, didn't fight over Divining Top, but did choose to fight over Young Pyromancer.
The Force of Will came off the top on his first draw step. I'm sure he would have Force of Will that top if he had the chance to.
All right, that one makes sense then. We go back over to Gabriel. Does have to get rid of a creature. His hand that we know of is a 1 more land, a Snapcaster Mage, and a Terminus. Now, so he has no clean answer to the Snapcaster just yet, but if he's able to find either a Terminus with his Divining Top, or maybe just a Brainstorm with it, he should be able to miracle that.
Right, with the Brainstorm and Miracles in hand, you can reset them to the top, be able to get them for their miracle cost.
Okay, as it plays out, it's just a land from Gabriel, a spin of the top end, a pass. We go back over to Bastecki. He plays a 3rd land, does have a Wasteland at the ready. Gabriel, 2 lands in play, no more in hand. Wasteland will go for Tundra. Gabriel will spin top. And Alex could do a number on Gabriel's mana here. Gabriel's draw last turn was Council's Judgment, which is actually a good answer to Young Pyromancer, but he'll need double white to cast that. And after Wasteland, he's sitting on no white sources.
And I think an issue right now is Shvachkin is without lands in hand, lands in the top 3, and a way to shuffle his deck. I think he's just getting locked up here.
His draw was Brainstorm, and he'll go ahead and cast it. Now, this is a big play, because if he finds the ability to make white mana with that 3rd card down, he could miracle a Terminus.
Or the alternate scenario is where he's Brainstorm locked and can't miracle anything.
Yeah, and that looks to be where he is. He drew Jace, Dig Through Time, and another copy of Terminus. Those are all the heavy hitters of the deck. That was just the wrong thing right there.
And, I've said before, Miracles does get a lot of these uneven draws with weird 1-ofs. Cards with miracle cost to draw in your opening hand. Sensei's Divining Top usually fixes that, but when you don't have a way to shuffle your deck, you still are beholden to whatever the top 3 are, and Shvachkin's just locked up right now.
Well, isn't that just how it feels like here? Because you'd think even if that 3rd card down was a fetch land, Gabriel's hand's excellent all of a sudden. So, he has a white mana source, he can miracle Terminus. Life is good.
Under no pressure, things are pretty good in that spot, but he's missed, and it's going to be a while for him to be able to reassemble land plus Terminus, if he even ever gets to it.
Yeah, so it's going to cost him some life points, but we'll see how many. First one's going to be a swing from Young Pyromancer from Bastecki. He'll pass. Now, remember, he hasn't actually made too many 1/1s with the Pyromancer yet, so it's just a 2 damage clock at the moment.
Yeah, his hand has been Gurmag, Angler, and Dig Through Time for a while now.
All right, Gitaxian Probe from Bastecki. He'll get to see the mess that Gabriel's working with. Snapcaster Mage top, Dig Through Time, Terminus.
Not a good
Jace.
look.
And the remaining cards on top of Gabriel's deck that we know are Council's Judgment and another Terminus. And then Alex, I would imagine, suspects that there are no lands in the next 2 cards either.
It'd be a weird way to play it.
Yeah. So one elemental is made off Gitaxian Probe. And we see Alex, you mentioned that dig through time in his hand. Gitaxian Probe is the 5th card in his graveyard. He has an uncracked fetch land. Now that he knows the coast is clear, he may just go digging to try to bury this game.
I think this seems like a good spot. It actually might be better here for Alex if he suspects that Gabriel is just locked right now, doesn't have access to another land, which would make sense. He could go the other route, which is just slam Gurmag Angler into play and hope to end the game as fast as possible.
That's a great point. He does have 2 delve spells, so there is some tension as to which one he wants to pick here.
I am curious.
Land 3. He has enough mana for one of them. So the advantage to Gurmag Angler would be that he would have a 2-turn clock on the board.
Yep.
The advantage to, but he would be soft to Terminus.
But in this spot, do you believe that Terminus is something that's going on down there? I mean, maybe there is, but there's certainly not corresponding white mana. So Gabriel would basically have to have the 3rd card down be a white source of mana, and then be able to Terminus.
It's asking for a lot.
Yep.
And you're right, that's the risk he's going to take. He'll go ahead and play Gurmag Angler this turn. And another young Pyromancer, he'll pass after attacking for 2.
Now, this is a slightly more risky line than I would advocate. I think that Alex could have paid 3 mana for the Angler, kept the young Pyromancer in hand, so he would have been closer to dig through time and would have had a chance to rebuild with young Pyromancer in the event that Terminus happened.
Yeah, well, it's not clear that adding the 2nd young Pyromancer actually changes the clock.
Exactly.
It's 2 turns both ways.
So,
but here's 10 damage. Gabriel's down to 5. Now, the advantage is that if Gabriel does somehow hit Terminus or a sweeper here, then Alex, because he played that extra Pyromancer, has Gabriel that much closer in lightning bolt range.
yes.
But it's not going to matter. Gabriel never finds the 2nd land. Game 1 goes to Alex Bastecki.
Yeah, Gabriel had a great start there with Divine Top, but was light on lands, got wastelanded, never was able to shuffle his deck, and just got locked by his top and Brainstorms.
So game 1, that's the pre-board game is in the books for the Grixis Delver player. Alex Bastecki up 1-0, has not dropped a game in the top 8 just yet.
And that's a big one to get because, as we mentioned before we came into the match, post-board Alex picks up a lot of really powerful cards.
All right, so when you talk about those powerful cards, I know he won game 1, but you're saying things will get better after board. What are we talking about?
I believe they do. There's a copy of Pithing Needle, a Dread Knight, a Sulfuric Vortex, an Ancient Grudge, a Dismember, 2 Power Blasts, a Elemental Blast, 2 Surgical Extractions, a Vendilion Click, and most notably 4 full play set Cabal Therapy. Therapy alongside Young Pyromancer, great synergy there. On top of that, you can bring in the Vendilion Click and the multiple red blasts here. Pithy Needle, also a great way to fight over Sensei's Divining Top.
And that's interesting because the 4 Cabal Therapy package with Young Pyromancer is something that we've been typically seeing in the main deck of these Grixis Delver strategies. But he's playing it out of the sideboard.
If you're gunning for the mirror match, I don't think Cabal Therapy is where you want to be. I think the mirror match and other Delver strategies is just playing to the board as efficiently as possible. But you definitely want to have at least 3 copies through the 75 because in the combo matchups and against control decks like Miracles, Cabal Therapy is your best weapon.
I mean, when you talk about the mirror match, 5 Delver decks in the top 8, it looks like Alex has made the right decision for this weekend.
Oh, for sure. Grixis Delver and other Delver decks all over the place, and I would have wanted the therapies in the board.
Okay, so he has 3 great counter spells, 4 Cabal Therapies, maybe even things like Vendilion Click or Sulfuric Vortex in the matchup. That's a lot of different angles to attack. He has discard, he has problematic permanence, he has counter magic. What's Gabriel going to be able to do on his side?
Aethersworn Candace, 2 copies of Monastery Mentor, 2 Blood Moon, 2 Rest in Peace, 2 Flusterstorm, 2 Pyroblast, a Wear Tear, 2 copies of Vendilion Click, a Venser Shaper Savant. 2 copies of Blood Moon is those are the most dangerous cards that Shvachkin's bringing to the table for this matchup. It's a lock. No basic lands in this list. Yes, there's Deathrite Shaman. Alex can also get ahead on the board, but if Blood Moon resolves with the board clean, it's over. I think that Gabriel may want to consider bringing in Rest in Peace for this matchup as well. Alex leans very heavily on the graveyard with threats like Deathrite Shaman along with his Delve cards. It's a little bit more narrow than it is against a Teamer Delver where they have threats like Nimble Mongoose and Tarmogoyf.
Yeah.
It's at least worth considering. I also think the Pyroblast, the Flusterstorm, and possibly the Vendilion Clicks are good for this matchup.
You know, and not to mention, Gabriel, if he boards in Rest in Peace, he may be predicting that Alex will bring in this playset of Cabal Therapy. In a top 8 scenario, they do get to see the other player's deck list.
And the Monastery Mentor is another interesting case here, as Alex does have bolts in his deck, so it's pretty bad to trade Monastery Mentor with it. But there is a guessing game now. If Alex doesn't have a removal spell, Monastery Mentor can easily win the game on its own, just like Young Pyromancer can. But if Alex is able to trade Lightning Bolts for Monastery Mentors, that's bad news on Gabriel's side of the table. I think Gabriel will probably bring them in. The swing issue here is that he can establish Counterbalance plus Sensei's Divining Top. That locks out all of Alex's removal for it, and then Monastery Mentor can run rampant.
Yeah, so it seems like rather than having creature-based win conditions, the way you're saying post-board is that Gabriel is going to be leaning on his enchantments as lock pieces, whether it's a Counterbalance plus top or whether it's a Blood Moon. Gabriel needs to survive until he can establish one of these pseudo-locks and then kind of win at his own pace.
Or just wear the game out in Counterbalance style with good removal spells and Snapcaster Mages for good value and so forth, and eventually get to something like a Large Entreat. But I do believe that his lock pieces in this matchup are very, very powerful. Blood Moon is another lock piece that he gets access to, and Monastery Mentor is a card I think he wants to strongly consider.
Now, can he still go on that Snapcaster Mage plan you talked about if he wants to go toward Rest in Peace?
No, and I think that Rest in Peace is, on the balance, unlikely to come in.
Yeah, that's true. The Snapcasters, I mean, if you want to be an effective control deck here, one thing you have to be able to do is to draw more cards than your opponent. The Snapcaster is one of his best ways to do it.
If it was Temur Delver, you know, with Nimble Mongoose and Tarmogoyf,
so good.
Yeah. But here, it is disruptive towards what Alex does, but not quite enough where it's worth bringing in something like Rest in Peace.
All right, now remember, 4 players remain. One of them will get their likeness on a token. That's the reward for winning the Invitational, in addition, of course, to getting your invite to the Players' Championship. Last Invitational was won by Ali Antrazi, if you haven't had a chance to see his token or get it during Season 3. He picked the Angel token you see there featured with his son on the card. Now, this is given away to all Open Series players in the following season. So show up to one of the Invitationals to get the one that will be produced after this event. Also, any Premier IQ 5K players will receive the token. And if you can't make it to any of those events, any order from StarCityGames.com of at least $5 will have one of these tokens shipped with it.
And remember, limited time only. One of these 4 players is about to have a token. So if you want to get your hands on the Ali Antrazi Angel token, either sign up for one of our large events as soon as possible or place an order from StarCityGames.com today.
All right, players underway for game 2. Shvachkin down 0-1. He dispatched the overall 1 seed, Eric Smith, in the top 8. Took a full 5 games to do it, but Gabriel was victorious.
An especially painful match for Eric Smith. I think the mixture of how close he was in game 5 before slowly getting locked up, coupled with the game loss in game number 2, that's going to be a tough one to swallow.
Yeah, Gabriel down to 5. Looked like he'd be able to close it out, but he did not. For Alex Bastecki, it's been a different story. He has yet to drop a game.
Ran right through Blue-Red Delver in the top 8. Solid matchup from the Grixis side. Gurmag, Angler, all sorts of trouble. We saw the same story play out. Another semifinal match where Gerard Fabiano was soundly defeated by Gurmag Angler in the game where that showed up.
Shvachkin will ship down to 6 cards. Bastecki looks like he'll join in on the mulliganing.
Yeah.
Reminder, there has been some talk about mulliganing rules. Players are still using the Paris mulligan rule for this top 8, which is if you aren't familiar with the terms, that's the one you've known and has been around for years. You can take a hand of 1 fewer card. Now, that may be changing down the road.
Yes, I think it's actually been announced that starting with the Battle for Zendikar pre-releases, that what's been called the Vancouver mulligan, where any player mulliganing 1 or more times gets a free scry at the beginning of the game. That will be in effect starting with the pre-releases.
This is maybe the last invitational featuring Paris mulligans.
Not a huge change, but
I think a welcome one, though. A lot of times, especially when players go to 6 or 5 cards and your opponent's on a 7, it can be real devastating. And I think any way to counteract that is something that players have been very excited about.
Yeah, I think on the balance, it's a positive change. I mean, any rule that you add to the game adds some degree of complexity. It's another thing to remember. So, you don't want to be adding a whole bunch of patch rules to plug up perceived problems in the game, but it's a relatively simple, innocuous change, and if it leads to more games or more people feeling like they have a chance to win when they mulligan, which already puts you at a pretty big disadvantage, so much the better.
On that note, Pete, we hope that they stay on 6 card hands. Last game we saw Gabriel with a very reasonable keep. 2 lands and a Sensei's Divining Top, along with Force of Will to stop anything. He just was not able to find more lands. He had a lot of redraws at them. The problem was only exacerbated when Alex wastelanded away his only white source.
It's an issue. The deck really wants to be drawing fetch lands to enable as much shoveling as possible. That game, I believe Gabriel was on Tundra and Volcanic Island, never found a fetch land, and when his initial Divining Top activations didn't yield what he was looking for, he was just stuck with them.
All right, both players are keeping, so we are a go for game 2. Gabriel will start with a Ponder. And to this degree, a lot of times you'll see Miracles players aggressively search basic lands to really prevent what happened to game 1.
Yes, especially since Gabriel is going to be on a Blood Moon plan as well. He wants to make sure that he can still function underneath the Blood Moon. That combined with Wasteland, I think that Gabriel is really going to prioritize getting as many basics in play as possible.
Ponder still on the stack. A shuffle was off the fetch land. And we'll see how he wants to set up. A lot of this is that whether or not he can really just make land drops on curve. You see a Force of Will and a Swords to Plowshares in Gabriel's hand, as well as land numbers 2 and 3.
Looks like a very solid 6-card hand, considering there's no copies of Sensei's Divining Top in it.
You know, one of the options he has here is to go for a keep counterbalance and go for a turn 2 counterbalance. Now, the danger, just how powerful is that if he doesn't have Divining Top in the matchup?
Still very, very good. Alex's spread of cards in terms of mana cost is not really that diverse. There's a lot of 1s and a lot of 2s. A blind counterbalance is still going to do plenty in the matchup, and with cantrips, Gabriel can do a lot of work to set it up.
So we'll correct here. Gabriel does not have a copy of Force of Will in hand. It looks like it was a counterbalance instead. So he has counterbalance, Ponder, Swords to Plowshares, 2 more lands. We know there's another copy of counterbalance waiting on top of his deck.
So that seems very safe to just test out then, especially if you have the second copy. Run it out there for resolves, it's pretty solid. And if it trades with the counter spell, that's also very good when you have the second copy. Same deal with Sensei's Divining Top. Counterbalance and Sensei's Divining Top, the second copy doesn't do a whole lot. So if you can trade the first one with a counter and then get the second one to resolve, that's the best of both worlds.
So Gitaxian Probe cast for Alex. Starts to load up the graveyard for his early game, and then eventually try to close it out with delve cards like Gurmag Angler and Dig Through Time, but he'll want some early threats. As a fetch land. Now there's a copy of Swords to Plowshares, as we know, in Gabriel's hand.
Also, I believe a copy of Cabal Therapy in Alex's hand, so now with the information from Gitaxian
all right. That's not playing fair with that card at all.
Gitaxian Probe and Cabal Therapy is my kind of language. 2 great tastes that taste great together.
So I figure you should just know what they have. Just get it right the first time.
Except you don't, because your opponent played a land and a Ponder, so you're not really working with a whole lot of information.
Here's Cabal Therapy. This one's not going to miss. Much more like a Thoughtseize. It'll be interesting. If he wants to clear the way for a creature, he can pick Swords to Plowshares. If he's worried about counterbalance, he can pick that, and that's the worry. This is a great news for Gabriel.
Yes, I mean, he's not happy to see the Cabal Therapy necessarily, but being able to get a counterbalance out of hand and then get to cast the follow-up counterbalance is a really good spot.
True for the turn of white card. Did have a counterbalance in those 3 off the Ponder, which means he has it as the next card down. There we go. Counterbalance Terminus in the top 3 here. So not only can he redraw the counterbalance when he chooses, but he also gets to float this Terminus, and apparently he's going to do none of them. He'll shuffle it away, so that replacement counterbalance is not happening.
This is an issue that Miracles can run into when it doesn't have Sensei's Divining Top. That is a really disjointed Ponder. I mean, you have a counterbalance that may or may not do anything, a Terminus that's very timing sensitive, and a Pyroblast where who knows what that's going to be able to do.
Yeah.
When you have Divining Top in play, you can finagle all of these weird draws and weird setups, but without it, you sometimes get very disjointed draw steps and disjointed hands, and then you're very vulnerable to discard spells because you only have so much stuff in your hand that does anything.
He would want the counterbalance, but you have to have it next turn, and if he had it next turn, then he'd miss his Terminus Miracle, and, and everything's just going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So it turns out he shuffles, draws a card, plays Arid Mesa, and passes back. Still does have that copy of Swords to Plowshares in his hand. So go to Bastecki. Will he present a threat? Still has a Cabal Therapy in the graveyard. Wasteland in hand, but as we mentioned, Gabriel's wise to that this game. Looks like it'll be Delver of Secrets from Alex.
I assume. Checklist card is Not super clear, but let's assume that's a Delver.
And a land and a pass. Both players know that Gabriel has this covered. Looks like Gabriel picked up another counterbalance this turn, so may still get that lock going. So fetch. Being careful to get basics here. Now has basic island, basic plains. No red source just yet, though, so we're not in fear of Blood Moon.
Although, you know, I don't know how much it's worth playing around the Wasteland at this point once you already have the Tundra. If Alex Wastelands you here, then you're down to Plains Island, which is probably worse than
Plains
Island
and
Tundra.
So it'll be Swords to Plowshares on the Delver. This is interesting. So Gabriel, if he's going to play Counterbalance and Swords, had to pick which one he wanted to expose to Daze. And it looks like he'll expose the Counterbalance.
A little bit odd to me. I think my preference would have been just to play the Counterbalance first.
Make sure that one resolves. Then if you have to take 3, so be it.
Also, it's possible that you just blind reveal a 2 if they have Daze and you go for Swords to Plowshares that turn. You can also just untap and Swords to Plowshares, as you mentioned. In any case, no Daze and it's in.
Yeah, he gets to have both his spells. So the Delver of Secrets is exiled. Counterbalance is in play. Gabriel at a healthy 18. He doesn't have the top yet, but this is still where he wants to be.
Yep, got another answer for a creature in hand, a threat to go along with it, Counterbalance. Good setup so far.
Let's go back to Alex. He's drawn a copy of Young Pyromancer. Has another threat, but now all his threats will have to sneak by this enchantment. Alex Bastecki, 4-0 in games so far in the playoffs rounds today. This may be his toughest game yet.
Definitely shaping out to be a lot harder than game 1. Not that Alex's position is bad by any stretch, but...
Yeah, I mean, Gabriel, that counterbalance is... Its ability to counter a 2-drop is low. It could happen. As long as Gabriel doesn't have a Divining Top going, we're still playing a lot of Magic.
Yeah.
So a third land from Alex will fetch up another volcanic island. Remember, we're just fighting against those lock pieces, whether it was Counterbalance plus Divining Top or whether it was Blood Moon. Those are the ways that Gabriel can close out the game. Here's Young Pyromancer. A blind flip doesn't work. No, it's Entreat the Angels. That's 3. It does mean that next turn Gabriel can Miracle it for X equals 1, if you'd like.
This is a lot of information for Alex to work with, though, because he has Wasteland in hand. So now
if he Wastelands Gabriel off the white mana, then it's no go.
Yeah, then we got a dead draw.
Yeah, I think he would have to wait, though. I believe he got a volcanic island this turn. So the Miracle, we'll see if Gabriel wants to spend his turn making a 4/4. X equals 1. So the Miracle cost on Treat is white, X. So make 1 4/4. Entreat the Angels, that's the eventual win card for Miracles. 2 copies in Shvachkin's list.
Yeah, this is not how you draw it up. You'd like to do it for more, but at the same time...
4/4 is big. It gets by Lightning Bolt. It blocks Young Pyromancer.
And Entreat's pretty close to a dead draw if you just take it, so...
Yeah, taking it, it's 5 mana for 1 4/4, 7 for 2.
Yep.
This was your chance if you ever wanted to cast it. And now there's the Wasteland you mentioned from Alex. It'll go after Tundra. Looks like another Young Pyromancer in Alex's hand. He may be able to swarm by it, or he could play a 5/5, and that's Gurmag Angler.
Though we know that Gabriel has this currently covered with Swords to Plowshares.
Yeah, Swords will be what he needs to have. No real way to blind counter that. Gabriel with no 7s in his deck. All right, those Swords to Plowshares, Monastery Mentor in Gabriel's hand.
Also, it's just drawn Blood Moon, and
that'll be great.
Could establish a lock pretty easily. He's, without a third land and without red mana, but it doesn't take much of a board advantage for Gabriel to lock the game up if he's able to resolve a Blood Moon.
All right, here's a Swords to Plowshares and Gurmag Angler. Alex will gain 5, but then Gabriel will take 4 of those points right back as he actually starts to attack with the Angel token.
Pretty aggressive line to play. I think with the power that's in Shvachkin's hand, I would have been inclined to hang back on defense.
Yeah, now he also has to realize that there might be some limited lifespan on that Blood Moon if he doesn't find the land soon. Remember, there's still a Cabal Therapy hiding in Alex's graveyard. Now, Alex doesn't know what's in Gabriel's hand, so naming Blood Moon would be a low probability event, but he's still got to be aware of it. Here's a second Young Pyromancer from Alex, and he'll just pass the turn. Or rather, tries to counter it. Ponder doesn't work.
Right, and I think that what Alex is trying to set up this turn is resolve Deathrite Shaman, flash back to Therapy, make a bunch of tokens, and then get the ball rolling. He can't take that line of play now with a 1 casting cost card on top of the deck, so he might just have to hang tight for now.
Yeah, and I like how Alex used a 2-mana spell as a test spell, so we could see what Gabriel's top card was. 2 mana is a lot safer because Gabriel's deck is much lighter on 2s than it is on 1.
Yeah, at 1 mana you look at Ponder, Brainstorm, Sensei's Divine Top, Source of Plowshares. It's a lot of the spells.
Yeah, there's about 20 cards in the deck that can counter it. But at 2, not so much. You're looking at other copies of Counterbalance, the 1 copy of Counterspell, some Snapcaster Mages, that's about it.
Yeah.
So here's a Ponder from Gabriel. Still has that Blood Moon. Does not find another land, but what he does find is another Swords to Plowshares. This is number 3. It'll try to take down one of the 2 Pyromancers, and that'll succeed. It's one of the strengths of Miracles is that because there are 4 Swords to Plowshares deck, the Avonhems are really well equipped to deal with these, 14 creature aggressive decks.
Yes. Especially if you get, a Terminus here or a blind Counterbalance reveal there. There's just not that many threats in these decks.
Swing with the Angel, and life totals are 16 to 15 now in favor of the Miracles player. But still, Shvachkin having the issue where he's stuck on lands, just 2 of them. Young Pyromancer will knock him down to 14. Let's see whether or not Bastecki has a good follow-up. Looks like a copy of Dig Through Time in his hand. Gabriel not cooperating at all. He keeps exiling Alex's creatures instead of just killing them. And
Bastecki sitting on Sulfuric Vortex here, which I'm not even sure he wants to cast.
Right, and that's the danger, right? So we'll see if it gets countered here. And I think Bastecki casting it because this is his best line at this point.
Yep.
So, and that's one thing you talk about. It's Sulfuric Vortex, a great card against control decks, though this is an interesting board state where we're not sure who it's the best for. Each player will lose 2 life every upkeep, and there's no more life gain.
So Shvachkin has sort of preemptively played around this by just attacking. If he was hanging back on defense, like I advocated earlier, this Sulfuric Vortex would be a much larger problem.
Yeah, but as it stands, he may just be content to say, all right, you want to race? I guess we'll race.
Yep.
Here's a swing with the Angel token. It puts Bastecki down to 11, and now down to 9 on upkeep.
So this is a 2-turn clock on Gabriel's side.
Right, it's 6 a turn. Cataxian Probe cast by Bastecki, and this is powerful. It'll make a 1/1. He paid mana, not life for it. That's relevant. You see Snapcaster Mage and Blood Moon and Monastery Mentor. Remember that Gabriel has a copy of Cabal Therapy in the graveyard.
Mm-hmm. Gabriel also chose not to reveal to Counterbalance here. Aware of what the last card is, I believe it is Terminus.
So just in case Alex gets too many elementals here, you're saying there's a reset button.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great spot for the Miracles player then.
The issue is he kind of has to reset right now. He can't take the draw because then the Terminus is off the table. And resetting might be really rough here because there's a vortex.
The vortex matters,
There's a vortex in play.
So Alex will try to flash back Cabal Therapy. In response, Shvachkin is going to make Snapcaster Mage. So now with that knowledge, Alex goes ahead and takes the Monastery Mentor from Gabriel's hand, leaving him with Blood Moon, casts a Deathrite Shaman, and passes. It's a lot of action from Bastecki.
Yep.
2 damage puts Gabriel down to 10. That said, though, it's 10 to 9. If this is a Terminus, I feel like he still flips it. He'll win if nothing happens.
Well, he's actually got a little bit of an edge here as Alex is going to fall to 7, so there's going to be a 3-point gap.
Right. So here's Terminus. That'll be miracled by Gabriel. Now, if he was going to make this Terminus play, playing on Snapcaster Mage seems like something you wouldn't want to do. Or maybe was it the Deathrite Shaman that pushed him over the edge to make the decision?
No, I think that if I was in Gabriel's spot there, I would have just allowed the therapy to resolve. Now there's a lot of pressure on Alex to find another threat card as soon as possible.
Well, he has to. His own Vortex will kill him first. You see he goes to 7 on his upkeep. Now he'll cast Ponder. Gurmag Angler is one of the cards in that top 3, but he's, as we mentioned before, Gabriel exiling cards, putting cards in the bottom of the deck. They're not in the graveyard.
And there's also a question of, are there any burn spells left in Alex's deck? It's possible Lightning Bolts were the first thing to go. He brought in his copy of Dreaded Knight. To me, that's his answer to Monastery Mentor. That's the way he's planning on handling it. If he brought in that card, a very good chance that most of his burn, maybe all of it, is in the sideboard right now.
Yeah, and I think this is why we saw Alex think so hard about that Sulfuric Vortex. You know, he knew that he was, well, not to be too literal, he was playing with fire here when he cast it. Ponder from Alex. The blind flip from Gabriel is a island. That draw will do nothing. The Gabriel's last card is Blood Moon. But for Alex, he doesn't have a threat. It's red Elemental Blast, Brainstorm, fetch land. Hard to pass up a Brainstorm, but he'll do it. He needs to find a creature.
I guess he's liable to get Brainstorm locked at this point with no way to shuffle.
I mean, in Brainstorm, when you already know 2 of the other cards, is not functionally that different than just drawing a card.
Right.
I think if you have a lot of time, it's still actually better to take the Brainstorm here, but Alex needs action now, and look at the draw off Ponder. Alex shuffling off both Ponders. The final redraw is Deathrite Shaman, and that's actually enough to push it back in his favor.
Yeah, that's a huge tilting of the race here, and Alex knows the top card's an island.
So Gabriel to 8, now Alex to 5. And with that Deathrite, Alex is ahead in the race now. See him go for yet another Ponder. Does it get countered? No, Terminus is the top card for Gabriel. Oh boy, that puts the race.
It's still Gabriel's favor.
Still Gabriel's. Well, no.
No, 6 to 4,
it's not.
and then 3,
no, it's in Alex's favor.
Yeah, 1 Deathrite activation is still enough to tilt it over.
Remember, nothing like Swords to Plowshares to muck up this math. Players cannot gain life while Sulfuric Vortex is in play. And with that to mention, does Gabriel actually have a way to get the Vortex off the table? If he's behind on the race, that's got to be his play.
He's got a Wear Tear that he may have brought in. He has a Venser he may have brought in. But he has 1 copy of Council's Judgment. Which he doesn't have double white for. I mean, there's some ways to get it off the table, but not that many, and a lot of them aren't enabled right now.
Yeah, and we know that Terminus is his top card, so he may just be drawing dead at this point. I suppose he could draw a Dig Through Time and get multiple cards at once.
Well, you know, he can take the hit from Deathrite Shaman. He can cast the Terminus. He can draw Wear Tear, if that's in his deck. And, okay, we're still playing. He's in bad shape, but it's not the end of the world.
Gabriel goes to 4. He'll cast Terminus. Deathrite Shaman will exile card from Gabriel's graveyard. That will put him to a very relevant 4 life.
Yes.
So
Alex goes to 3. Gabriel will go to 2. Alex goes to 1. Gabriel goes to exactly 0.
Exactly. So he'll need something that changes the equation. He needs to get the Sulfuric Vortex off the table. The other option would be to get damage, but the only other creature he has left in his deck, I guess he could put a Snapcaster Mage into play, attack for 2. We're looking at things like this. But it's Alex Bastecki who has Dig Through Time, not Gabriel. Gabriel tries to blind counter that dig, but he finds Ponder.
Ponder's a lot of draws at it next turn. If Gabriel's got the answer, if Gabriel has answers in his deck, Ponder's one of his better draws.
Well, one of those cards Gabriel dug into is Lightning Bolt. There's a Volcanic Island in his hand. Now, the top card of Gabriel's deck's Ponder, though.
Right, that's not game.
That's not game. If Alex put those both on the table, we'll see if he revealed it or cast it. That will be the judge's call.
Yeah, that is not lethal. We know there's a Ponder on top of Gabriel's deck right now.
Yeah, and we understand his excitement.
Yeah. It's a weird spot because Alex put the Bolt and a Volcanic on the table.
Right. He flips the Bolt up the dig and says, and my last card in hand is Volcanic. Now, that does not necessarily mean he tried to cast it.
Right.
So it really depends on, this is a spot where it depends on what was said, and the judge will rule on this one. And it looks like Alex gets to keep the cards in his hand. He didn't actually announce the spell being cast. So he'll pass back. Gabriel will go to 2. And now, what very well could happen is the moment Gabriel casts this Ponder, Alex will try to kill him. There we go. All right, Ponder. Alex goes for the win. Is it a 1? It is. It's Pyroblast. We're still playing. Top cards, and it's
Oh,
wear
wow.
tear.
Okay.
Gabriel Shvachkin.
We play on. I mean, we don't know what Alex's leftovers were off of that dig-through time.
And you know, if you're Alex, that he decides he doesn't shuffle. Here's wear tear, or rather just tear, but that'll take care of the enchantment, and it's gone. Gabriel still alive. Now, if you want to make that play, does it matter whether he made it during Alex's up after Alex took the 2 damage?
I don't know if some weird mixture. There's a Spell Pierce hanging out in the list. Although I think Gabriel probably could have set the Pyroblast on top of the deck to avoid that. And 3 versus 1 is really significant because Alex has fetch lands, he has Force of Will. So
Gabriel's Snapcaster Mages.
Yep.
So pass back. Gabriel put an island on top of that, which means his top card is that Red Blast. It'll counter any 1 mana spell from Alex. Once he draws it, it'll counter any blue spell. Here's a 1 mana spell. That's Cabal Therapy. That's not going to work, though. Gabriel has that Pyroblast again. Gabriel may have just turned this around.
And remember, that Blood Moon is lurking over there in Gabriel's hand. He can't cast it, but it's not quite a lot because Lightning Bolt is still alive.
Yeah.
But if Gabriel can get that into play, Alex has very few castable cards left in the deck.
Delver of Secrets for Alex. Does it get countered? No. But he can't do that. He doesn't have red mana. His top card, though, was a fetch land, so he can get red mana.
Yeah.
So he's okay. He's right that he has the answer for it.
Just not right now.
Right. There's Arid Mesa. Gabriel down to 1. He cannot crack another fetch. He does not play a basic mountain. He does play 2 copies of Volcanic Island. There's one of them.
But this Arid Mesa is a huge draw. You can kill the Delver this turn, and then the stage is set for Blood Moon the next turn.
There's the Pyroblast. Does it take down the 1/1? I believe Alex has a Spell Pierce, but that won't do anything here. Not to mention, when Gabriel goes for Blood Moon, Alex will actually have 5 mana.
Yeah, it's set up pretty well here for Gabriel.
And Vendilion click on end step for Alex. Is there a 3 on top? No, it's Volcanic Island. His last card's Blood Moon. No, Alex won't take that. And game 2 to Alex Bastecki. 1 turn away from getting Blood Mooned out. Vendilion click finds a way, and he is up 2 games to 0.
Yeah, Gabriel was right at the door of locking out Alex there. I mean, he was right there.
Yeah, when he found the wear tear, you thought, wait, there's a chance.
So to go back there, I was not a big fan of Alex's timing on the Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, and I think Alex wasn't either, too.
I think because of the way that Alex was playing the game there, he was sort of peppering Gabriel with low-impact spells along the way to see what was on top of the deck with counterbalance and then play accordingly. I think in that spot, Alex wants to cast the Lightning Bolt when he's made an informational spell and sees the top card and knows the coast is clear, or in response to Sensei's Divining Top when the Bolt's about to get locked out.
So what you say is, instead of, when he goes for it in response to Ponder, he is telling Gabriel, you just have to blind flip a 1. But I mean, that can happen. So you're saying is maybe, say Alex a couple turns down the road draws a Young Pyromancer and then plays Young Pyromancer or something where he gets to see Gabriel's top card and says, oh, hey, your top card's not a 1. Then I'll kill you.
Exactly. The game's likely to go on for a very long time in that spot. And Alex is going to have other spots for an informational spell, see the top card, see if the coast is clear for Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, and actually, if that's his plan, he doesn't even care about the Blood Moon.
Right.
He says, oh, sure, you give me all mountains. Well, this Lightning Bolt's still good.
The only spots where I would have cast that Lightning Bolt without perfect information on the top card of the deck was either in response to something that gained life to push him outside Lightning Bolt range, or in response to Sensei's Divining Top.
Because if Gabriel's going to resolve top, then the Lightning Bolt will never work.
Exactly.
So you said, okay, well, you forced my hand.
Yeah.
So casting it in response to a cantrip's not bad, but only if it's a top.
I think that Alex could have waited for a better spot with more information than the one he took, and he almost got locked out of that game. It was very, very close.
Certainly was close, but Vendilion click carries it on. So 2 games to 0. Alex knocking on the door for the finals of our Invitational. We go back to the sideboard. Now that we know what the players have done, so Dread of Night and Sulfuric Vortex have both actually come in on Alex's side, as well as the Red Blast, the Cabal Therapies, and let's not forget one of Vendilion click.
And now I got to question whether or not Gabriel is going to stay on this Monastery Mentor plan. Alex's answers to it are 1 mana spells. Lightning Bolts and Dread of Night, and I suppose the Fork Bolt as well. So when they're all 1 mana, it's conceivable Gabriel can go ahead and lock him out of the game with top plus counterbalance. But Alex has demonstrated that he's leaving in some answers for Monastery Mentor. And if I was in Gabriel's position, I would start to question the card. If he's going to leave in Bolt, maybe you're better to start getting that card out of your deck.
Well, the players shuffle for game 3. This is a best of 5, remember. So Gabriel is going to need to reverse sweep this series if he wants to win it. One thing we're going to talk about, though, this is as we reach the end of summer, is the Star City Games Summer Series. These feature your favorite critters from SCG game nights. Also, for our summer sales, we are doing all August long a new sale every day starting at 11 a.m. This is the one we are doing today. This is 15% off selective promo basic lands. You see there, arena lands, the full art judge promos, a lot of, and we talked recently, if you watched PAX yesterday, full art land's going to be everywhere. You can pick up some great ones here.
Yes, absolutely. You see some full art judges foils, arena foils, some foreign language cards as well. 15% off promo basic lands every day, 11 a.m. Eastern. New sale on the website. Make sure to go to starcitygames.com every day. Check out what's up for sale.
Let's go back. So Shvachkin, as I said before, we're going to need the next 3 games. And these games haven't felt that bad for him. He got that early counterbalance. A lot of things really went Gabriel's way. 3 copies of Swords to Plowshares.
He did not have... Gabriel was very close to winning that game. Make no mistake about it. But he didn't have Sensei's Divine Top. And Alex had Cabal Therapy. And I think in a lot of those games, Gabriel is going to struggle to get much going because he has a lot of disjointed draw steps. And Alex's discard really magnifies the weird cards that appear in Gabriel's hand from time to time.
I guess where he has been punished, games 1 and 2, is in the land department. He has been stuck on 2 lands, either because his deck wouldn't give him a third or because, well, Alex has been wastelanding him, as he would do. But, that spot where he gets up to 4 mana, starts getting to cast cantrips and play reactionary spells, it's been an either-or thing for him.
Right. He has not had these smooth, elegant draws of top into counterbalance into some removal spells with the mana being clean, and he couldn't cast his Pyroblaster Blood Moon for a very long time in that game.
Right, when he had the top game 1, it was costing him his turn to use its ability. See, Alex there, I've noticed with each of his draws, he deals out a face. When he was on 6 last game, it lost a tooth, but I'm wondering what happens when he goes to 5 cards. It's going to look pretty bad.
Well, you start losing your ability to even make faces once you run out of cards,
I do like it if it slowly became a frowny face as he went into lower on cards. It'd be very expressive.
Mm-hmm. But Alex has got to be feeling pretty solid right now, pretty comfortable, up 2-0. Good sideboard for the matchup. Gabriel taking a mulligan.
Now, mulliganing, while not preferred, is something pretty manageable for Miracles. If they can get that lockdown, they certainly create enough card advantage to not mind that they're missing one.
That is true, and that is certainly true game 1. I think it becomes much less the case here post-board when Alex is attacking him with the discard spells.
6 cards for Gabriel. And we have a game. He'll be keeping. Starts on a Ponder, so no Divining Top there. Scariest thing for Miracles is when they have the turn 1 Divining Top on the play. It really just puts pressure on you to have that force of will or to try to play out from under a Divining Top.
Yep, 1 copy of Pithy Needle on Alex's list also, which I am assuming is in his deck right now. So he's got that answer as well, but turn 1 top against Chris's colors, no threat of Crozan Grip. Really good opening, and Gabriel has had it game 1, but just never had any lands to go with it. Never found it in game 2.
Same strategy as game 2. Gabriel's going to lead off on basics and a Ponder to just try to set up here. Looks like, unlike his previous 2 games, Gabriel does not have any shortage of lands this time around.
Yeah. Looks like a fine 6-card hand, but again, no copy of Sensei's Divining Top.
Top 3 cards are Fetch Land and 2 more Ponders. Gabriel will accept that. So he'll Ponder into Ponder and pass. Looks like 2 lands, Brainstorm, and a Red Blast in his hand. So some decent reaction cards.
Yep.
He's soft to things like Young Pyromancer, though, or maybe some well-timed discard.
Yeah, but although Alex also has to be careful on his side of the table as well, as Blood Moon, as we know, is going to be a lock if he has no board. So Alex is not going to be that aggressive tapping out for threats here if he doesn't have an answer to Blood Moon or information that it's not going to be cast.
So see what Alex has here. Last game, he was able to do a number on Gabriel's mulligan by having Gitaxian Probe into Cabal Therapy. This time it'll just be a Delver of Secrets. So rather than going with the disruption plan, he'll try to get a clock down. Gabriel's, we know, does have the answer to this. He does have a red blast in his hand. And you see a fetch here. If for a red source, he may want to play a Daze Proof Red Blast. He has no other removal for this creature.
Yeah, he doesn't want to start taking these hits. Very important for him to keep his life total as high as possible because he wants to be in a position where if he's able to stick Blood Moon, but Alex has a board, he has the cushion to answer. He has an opportunity to draw out, find Terminus, Swords to Plowshares, what have you. So to set up that sort of game plan, Gabriel has to be conscious of his life total.
Yeah, Miracles is not a deck with huge amounts of life gain to undo damage.
Yeah.
And there it is, Pyroblast, the Fet with the mana up. He'll pass, and you see this conservative play. So Gabriel actually, with a Ponder in hand and a Ponder on top of the deck, opts not to cast it here. Mainly because if he knows he's drawing Ponder, he's going to draw a card he likes, and there's no rush to find anything.
Yep. Trying to avoid getting dazed.
Look at Alex's hand, he's got a lot of action. Cabal Therapy, Pithing Needle, Gurmag Angler, Wasteland. Great options for him.
You prefer not to Wasteland when you're behind on lands and have no board, but the feeling here might be, I need to keep Gabriel off Blood Moon. And this is kind of a nice way to do it here. The Cabal Therapy gives you some information about whether or not it's safe to Wasteland.
All right, he'll cast Cabal Therapy. Before he names a card, Gabriel will brainstorm here. He finds Swords to Plowshares and Divining Top. He doesn't want any of those being taken, so he'll put them back on top of the deck. The only hit Alex could have is if he names Ponder.
You sort of want to, it's a weird thing. You sort of want to name a 4-of, but not one of the tier 1 4-ofs because you know those are hidden.
Right, so Ponder's not a terrible card to name here. I don't think he named it. He went with Counterbalance
also
here.
Reasonable.
Yeah.
Not one of the marquee cards in this spot, but something that there's 4 copies of. And
let's assume if Gabriel had a Counterbalance, he could have made a turn 2 Counterbalance, but Red Blast Pass might be a preferable play, so it is perfectly reasonable that Gabriel would have had Counterbalance in his hand and hadn't cast it yet.
That's I think naming Counterbalance there is totally reasonable.
Is it so good that if he had a Counterbalance, it would have been hidden?
No, not necessarily.
And here's one of the hidden cards. Sensei's Divining Top for Gabriel. He has a Plains up. Alex will be at the ready with an answer, though. He has a Pithing Needle in hand.
Yep, his 1-of in the sideboard, very good to have here.
Yeah, and what I like about the play is even if Gabriel draws a card in response, because he doesn't have a fetch land, he'll redraw the Divining Top, and it will still be a dead card.
Yeah.
The real feel-bad play is when you needle away a top, and then they draw a card and shuffle it away, and then, well, you still got 2 for 1.
Yep. Now, Gabriel is still better served doing this because it's the same thing from a card standpoint, and there's the possibility somewhere down the line he can brainstorm and shuffle the top away.
Yeah, I mean, Needle still named Divining Top. I mean, it'll end in the same place, right? Gabriel just drew his next turn's card today.
Yeah. It's all the same, but Gabriel is better served having the top in his hand than in play.
Exactly. So redraws the top. Here's a Ponder from Gabriel. And I do like where this is going for Gabriel. Alex has not landed a threat. Ponder will shuffle.
And Gabriel had an opportunity there to take Counterbalance and completely went away from it. It was not a very good Ponder. It was 2 lands and Counterbalance. And Gabriel did not hesitate to shuffle that away. But Shvachkin is definitely floundering right now. He's light on resources. No Divining Top now or in the foreseeable future. Although Council's Judgment off the top can change that equation.
Remember, he does have that 1 copy of Wear Tear in his deck.
Yes.
Which so crucially took out a Sulfuric Vortex game 2. nearly won the game for Gabriel. Now we're back. Gabriel makes a third land, passes the turn. Will Alex make an end step play? He will. It's an end step brainstorm.
Yeah, Alex's hand is a little jammed up right now with Vendilion Click alongside Dig Through Time. So normally you want to draw, then brainstorm, give yourself the most looks at it, but Alex could really use double blue on time next turn for either Vendilion Click or Dig Through Time. So he's willing to sacrifice a little inefficiency with the brainstorm to give himself the best chance of having double blue to do something very productive next turn.
And on top of that, because he has both Gurmag Angler and Dig Through Time, I think he just wants to put cards in the graveyard at a reasonable clip.
Yes. Several motives.
The draw for the turn was Deathrite Shaman. Alex will lead on a Gitaxian Probe. Remember, there is a Cabal Therapy in the graveyard. We'll get a fresh look at Gabriel's hand. He's done a lot of cantripping. It is nothing like it was last time Alex saw it. We see that Divining Top, Swords to Plowshares, Council's Judgment, and then lands number 4.
Alex may have to just get the Council's Judgment out of the hand right now. The pace of the game is very slow and uneven right now. It feels like it's going to go on for a long time. I'm not sure Alex can handle Gabriel getting the Council's Judgment, the Pithy Needle, unlocking the top, and then starting to do its thing. So even though it's ugly, he may just have to put a creature into play, flashback to therapy, name Council's Judgment, and hope to draw out of this.
And we'll see if he makes just that play. Here's Deathrite Shaman. There's no land 3 here for Alex. You're right, if Council's Judgment takes care of that top, then Gabriel's off to the races. Swords to Plowshares will take care of Deathrite Shaman. Alex passes the turn, so he's going to decide against that play.
Yeah, I guess that Alex's philosophy is now this frees up the Gurmag Angler, but with Gabriel at 18, I'm not sure Gurmag Angler is favored against Sensei's Divining Top.
Hold on. Something a lot better just happened, though, for Gabriel. His draw for the turn was a copy of Blood Moon.
Okay, well, there's that too. We can just do that.
And Alex, on Wasteland Underground Sea, that will take care of his that will block it out.
Ring the bell. This one's done. There's not enough burn in Alex's deck to burn him out from 16.
Does he have any red cards? Any Monastery Swift Spears? He has Young Pyromancers.
Young Pyromancer. Very few spells. I mean, he can play out from here.
Does mean Gabriel will never be able to cast Council's Judgment. Seems like a small price to pay.
Yeah, I can't cast Council's Judgment. You can't cast nearly anything.
And, you know, Alex has got to be concerned. You see the writing on the wall there when Gabriel doesn't fetch for a white source?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, uh-oh. And yeah, here's Blood Moon. Draw from Alex. Yeah, he drew a red card. Great.
Awesome.
There is no answer to Blood Moon in his deck. Looks like we're going to play this one out for a little more. Going to have to find a way for Alex to win.
Because of Bolts and Young Pyromancers, Alex should not concede just yet.
Yeah, and also the Sensei's Divining Tops are now gone for the game. Yeah, Council Judgment won't be able to be cast. I guess there's still a Wear Tear in Gabriel's deck. If he finds that, he can unlock the tops. He puts these cards back on the deck. Brainstorm becomes a lot worse when you can never crack a fetch land.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be here
for a while, yeah.
Okay.
Young Pyromancer. All right, that is one of the remaining castable spells in Alex's deck. It will get Terminused. It's still in the deck, though.
Yeah.
So.
But you can't shuffle.
Is there no way to shuffle? No. Can't crack a fetch land. Can't shuffle with Ponder. Can't. No, it's actually just on the bottom of the deck, isn't it?
Yeah. I think Alex will probably submit here to the first real good proactive play or counterbalance plus top. If he can get the Pithy Needle off the table.
Sure, this Dig Through Time looks like it's going to find Monastery Mentor. That should be enough.
Yeah.
But I suppose if you're Gabriel, you actually want to wait for Monastery Mentor, and I know this is painful, until you have enough spells to protect it from Lightning Bolt.
Yes.
Because why not?
Gabriel's in very little rush.
Yeah. I'll just... The players continue to trade some lands for a while. Draw was Terminus. And he'll risk it. This could be bolted, but it's Monastery Mentor from Gabriel. Pass. Draw from Alex. It's Gurmag Angler. No Lightning Bolt. Only red card in his hand is a Pyroblast.
And now I think we're at the point of no return.
As long as Gabriel casts a spell for the mentor.
He's
Yeah,
got
I'm kinda
Snapcaster
agree.
and a
Sure.
cantrip and
Snapcaster, that can flashback Dig Through Time.
I don't think he can cast it.
You're right.
Gotta go with a cantrip. Cantrip's good enough.
Sure. The Volcanic cannot make blue, so he can't make that play. But sure, I think any non-creature spell seems excellent. And that's a monk token. And Monastery Mentor for 3. That will start the clock. 3 creatures in play. Alex would have to get a lot of tokens off a Young Pyromancer to stop this. Young Pyromancer that he hasn't drawn yet. And Gabriel may be the first player to take a game off Alex Bastecki, and that's going to be thanks to the copies of Blood Moon he's boarded in.
Yeah, I mean, he's picked up a Pyroblast here. He can use to take care of Snapcaster Mage if he's feeling so inclined.
Sure. And he will. Looks like he has another Red Blast effect in his hand. Uses the Wasteland to do it.
Yep. But this is, as
Yeah.
former colleague Andrew Shrout used to call, garbage time.
Yeah.
We're in garbage time.
No, you're on the court. You're down by 8.
Just
There's 20 seconds left. You're gonna let's foul him. Let's bring him to the line again.
We're just trying to have no one get hurt. That's all.
Yep.
That's all we're trying to accomplish right now.
If they miss every free throw, and we score every basket in 2 seconds. Yeah. All right. Game 3 goes to Gabriel Shvachkin. He is on the board, but we'll need 2 more.
And he's going to be on the draw for Game 4 and Game 5 if necessary. You can see the danger, though, of Blood Moon. I mean, it looked like we were kind of going back and forth there. Not super clear who had an advantage. And all of a sudden, the game ended. It was so sudden.
I mean, I understand. Blood Moon's a heck of a card. I'm very used to losing games to Blood Moon.
Yep.
Grixis Delver, though, does do that as well. You don't always see this card in Legacy, but it is great against some of the Delver decks because of the fact that they don't get to have can't afford to play any basics.
Yeah, the Teamer Delver deck, the Teamer Delver deck can accomplish it via getting ahead on the board very early. And some of the other builds of Delver have things like Abrupt Decay, which can handle Blood Moon pretty easily without having to go through a lot of hoops. But the Grixis Delver deck is not especially fast. It does not have easy access to enchant removal because you're in the Grixis colors, so it's not easy to get a Blood Moon off the table. And you don't really have much in the way of workarounds. You can have Deathrite Shaman, and that can give you some mana in some spots. You can get ahead on the board, but the deck's not as good at getting ahead on the board as some of the other builds of Delver, and so it's a pretty big liability for the deck.
And it seems like these mana issues have just been compounding both the players. You know, games 1 and 2, Gabriel couldn't get off the ground with lands, and actually the last game, Alex had a lot of really powerful cards in his hand and some great interaction, but with just Wasteland and an Underground Sea, it didn't seem like he was ever able to really get that velocity going that he needed.
Yeah, he had Dig Through Time and he had Vendilion Click, which were a couple cards he was kind of desperate to get to, but he was stuck on Underground Sea, pressed Wasteland. He had a couple of red cards in his hand because he didn't have any copies of Volcanic Island in play, so he couldn't facilitate those. So yeah, he did run into some mana troubles, but that is a function of playing these 3-color Delver decks alongside Wastelands is that's not that uncommon. I mean, the mana fixing is very good. You have fetch lands and the original duel, so in most games it's going to work just fine. But especially your draws involving Wasteland, often you're going to be missing one of the colors. There's only 18 lands in the deck, 19 lands in the deck. So when you stumble out of the gates against a deck like Miracles as well, it's going to hurt you a lot because time's not on your side. They do have an ability, especially when the Miracles deck is bringing Blood Moon into the game's post board, which can beat you out of nowhere.
All right, so we're at the midway point of our first semifinal between Gabriel Shvachkin and Alex Bastecki. Alex is up 2-1. Currently, while we do that though, we want to talk a little about some big Magic news that happened yesterday. This was at PAX. They announced a lot of the Battle for Zendikar set. So first of all, we got to see some great spoilers from the set. Got to hear about some amazing foil lands that are coming out over the course of this next half year. You and Cedric got to talk about that. I want to go to more of the constructed part, though. We did see that while there are no fetch lands in the set proper, there's a new cycle of duels, and it looks to be really powerful. These are dual lands that, if you control two or more lands, they come into play untapped.
Basic lands.
Two more basic lands, they come into play untapped. And what's more relevant about them is that they have both basic land types on them.
So the lands are worse than Bridge Reverse, Thicket, and Sea Crone Coast.
The fast lands, right?
The fast lands in the event that you aren't playing with a lot of basics. But there's some benefits here. One, if you have a lot of basics, they are, very close to the same thing. But the really significant thing is they count as the land types. They can be fetched via Windswept Heath and Friends. And for standard, at least, that's a huge boon for the mana fixing.
So let's first start, when there's nothing like a fetch land, we'll get to that in a second. These things seem like they're very similar to the lands we've seen in the core set and in Innistrad, the check lands or buddy lands that, if you have some basics in play, they usually come in untapped, but they didn't come into play untapped on turn one.
These lands are quite a bit worse than those lands because 2 is a lot more than 1.
Number, yeah.
You can have 1 land pretty easily in your hand. 2, you're starting to, how many basics are really in your deck? Can you afford to play other duels? But the land types being loaded on the type line,
right.
That's such a big deal.
So now we talk about fetch lands.
Yep. And for standard, the mana fixing gets so much better because you get a little taste of my Bloodstained Mire can go get my Watery Grave kind of play pattern that we're familiar with from Modern and from Legacy. You get a little bit of that in standard. Now, if there's only the 5 cons fetches alongside the 5 allied lands, it does limit the permutations. Part of the reason that the mana fixing is so free and so good in Modern and Legacy is that there's 10 of each land, so it's really hard. Eric Smith was playing a 4-color deck. He had a couple fetch lands so that he couldn't find every single duel, but for the most part, if you're 3 colors, it's all good.
Right.
You don't even have to be that selective about which fetch lands you're playing. And so because there's only 5 and 5, it does limit some of the permutations and the consistency,
right.
But fetching for these lands is a big deal.
So what it means right now, because we have allied colored fetch lands and these allied color duels, is that if you have, say, a Windswept Heath, that's a green-white fetch land, you could get any color with it as long as it's not the one mutual enemy color. So for Windswept Heath, you can't get black mana off it right now, but you could get the other 4.
Yes, and I think that these kind of lands are a big boon for the original shards. Because, if you look at, say, let's look at Bant Heroic and Standard, for example, you don't have one of the comes into play tap tri-lands that you get with the cons cycles. And, your fetch lands are only doing so much in terms of mana fixing when you have sensitivity for all the colors. You need white, green, and blue often. And even though Flooded Strand and Windswept Heath do a lot to help that, at the end of the day, you only get a forest or a plains or an island with it. And we watch Bant Heroic all the time where it's missing colors and mana. Now with these in the mix, your Flooded Strand, Windswept Heath, some basics, and these dual lands filling out, the mana becomes so much more reliable. So I think for, decks like Bant and Jund, the mana gets so much better with these 5 allied lands alongside the 5 fetches and Constar Care.
It means I can play a lot more fetch lands in my deck. We've seen even, in these Bant Heroic decks, they have Windswept Heath and Flooded Strand, but it's not always 8 fetch lands in the deck because you didn't actually have that many things you could fetch up. You can't fetch a temple, you can't fetch a mana confluence. But with these cards, would you expect to see just larger numbers of fetch lands in these decks?
I think so. So I think the mana basis that you're going to start to see for the cons 3-color cycles,
right.
You have your tri-lands and you have your 1 fetch land alongside, and you get one of these dual lands as well.
So Windswept Heath for Abzan.
Yes, and you have the Apocalypse M15/Magic Origins dual land.
Landmore Wastes, Caves of Koilos.
Battlefield Forge, and so on. For your shards 3-color pairings, you get 2 sets of fetch lands plus 8 potentially of these duels. That's a lot to fill out your mana fixing. The mana bases are going to start looking quite a bit different from each other. They were kind of homogenized because there's 10 temples, so you just find the temples to mix and match. But now I think there's going to be a pretty interesting divide in the 3-color decks where we see 2 sets of fetches along 2 sets of these for the shards, and for the wedges you see your 1 dual land, your 1 fetch land, and your M15 Magic Origins Apocalypse Pain land filling out the roster.
This is really interesting. So when you told me the Abzan mana base, Sandstep Citadels, Caves, Landmore Wastes, and then Windswept Heaths, that sounds a lot like what I'm already playing in my Abzan deck. But then when you told me what the Bant deck gets to play, it sounds like Bant might just have better mana than Abzan in a lot of ways.
It's at least close. It depends a lot on, how sensitive are you for colors on certain turns. Also, drawing these lands early on in the game there is a big cost. I mean,
Yeah, they're coming to play tapped.
When you're imagining the scenarios involving fetching for these on the first turn, they look really, really good. But you just draw this on turn 2, and you have another non-basic land in your hand, so you can't fill the basic land requirement for this, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't scry when it comes into play. There's going to be moments where these lands represent a pretty big cost, but in terms of consistency for 3-color decks, particularly shards that didn't have access to the same level of mana fixing as, you know, decks like Mardu and Abzan,
right.
I think these lands are going to be a huge boon, and I think there's going to be modern implications as well. You were mentioning for decks like Scapeshift, you think these lands are potentially very powerful. Right,
and so the question we'll touch on this shortly here is that in modern, you know, do you play these in addition to some shock lands? I don't think you can cut all your steam vents, for example, but maybe some of them. But yeah, the one I'm really interested in is, you know, Scapeshift in a lot of ways, for example, is a blue-green deck that just has to play 10 mountains in it. So you have your stomping grounds, those things were great, but you'd have to start playing some basic mountains. There were some cards you really didn't want, you know. I'm very excited to have all my mountains make a reasonable color of mana now.
Exactly. I mean, playing with cheap green cards and Cryptic Command with basic mountains in your deck, you can see how a lot of losses get kind of priced in. So having another set of stomping grounds, even if they're not quite as good as stomping grounds for that deck, does increase quite a bit of consistency.
All right, well, we're going to head back to the match. This is game number 4 between Alex Bastecki and Gabriel Shvachkin. Alex will be on the play here. He dropped game 3. It was his first loss of the top 8. As we are underway here, Grix is getting to be on the play. He has not been on the play since game 1.
Yeah, but he gets it for 4, and if necessary, for 5.
So get the fetch off this turn, and you see he'll start with the Dread of Night out of his sideboard. You said this was a concession to Monastery Mentor. It does look very strange in the matchup.
Well, this card alongside the bolts that Alex also showed, to me, like I said, if I was in Gabriel's spot, I would really start to question whether or not Monastery Mentor in the deck. And now seeing the Dread of Night as well, if I'm Gabriel, I'm not touching that card for game 5 if it happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing this really affects. It actually is, I mean, okay, so Angels are 3/3s, I suppose, but that's all it does. Ponder on Shvachkin's side. It's been his leadoff play for the last couple of games. As we go back to Alex, so that said, though, it's a weak turn 1 play. It's something that Gabriel can ignore for the most part.
Alex's hand's got a lot of his sideboard cards in it. He's got Dread Knight plus the Needle. It's nice to draw your sideboard cards, but if Alex takes too slow of a pace in this game and doesn't have enough threats or enough relevant immediate disruption, Gabriel can play through the Needle. I mean, he won last game with Needle on top for essentially the whole game.
Does Dread of Night feel like over sideboarding to you?
I don't know. If Alex feels he's really exposed to Monastery Mentor, then I think it's fine. But
there's only there's only 1 in his opponent's list, I believe.
There's 2, I believe. 2 in the sideboard.
2 in the sideboard. Okay. Well, here's Young Pyromancer from Bastecki. That one is going to be a good threat.
My preference in Alex's spot would probably just be leaving the bolts and don't touch Dread of Night. But it'll be interesting to see what happens in game 5 if we get there. Because Gabriel may now cut the Monastery Mentors having seen Dread of Night.
Swing for 2, put Shvachkin down to 18. His only spell so far has been a copy of Ponder. See, Wasteland's going to go up Volcanic Island. And that will just happen. He's not taking too much damage, though. So as long as Gabriel can replace these lands that Alex goes for, this should be okay.
Yep. Although Gabriel would like to avoid deploying the non-basics if possible. We've seen that already. So if he had to deploy a Volcanic early, implies that his hand's either light on lands or all he has is non-basic lands to deploy.
Plays a fetch land this time as he passes back. That one can't be wastelanded. There is another wasteland in Bastecki's hand. Is it one other wasteland, a Young Pyromancer in hand, a Young Pyromancer in play. The one in play will hit for 2, Shvachkin down to 16. And it'll be Deathrite Shaman from Alex. He is being tentative with these threats here. He doesn't want to get hit too hard by a Terminus.
Well, Gabriel's opening thus far has been really suspicious. He hasn't been doing much of anything for the first couple of turns. Often, this means that he's setting up Brainstorm plus Terminus. And so Alex wants to put enough on the table to force the issue and also apply a lot of pressure in the event that there's just something wrong with Gabriel's hand, while leaving himself some things left over in the event that Gabriel is setting up a terminus.
See, Alex, he does play that third land. It's a wasteland, but Gabriel's just going to get basics. Doesn't want that to happen to him. Brainstorm will be cast by Gabriel.
And I love this play from Alex. Not only does it increase the clock and allows him to use the Pyroblast, it means that if Gabriel is trying to set up Brainstorm into Terminus, that cuts that off right away, and you can't cut it off by countering the Terminus because it's a white spell.
That's exactly what I was trying to do, too. On Gabriel's side, he plays a third land. You saw him go for Monastery Mentor and then remember that Dread of Night in play.
It's pretty bad right now. You know, I don't know if Dread of Night represents over sideboarding or what, but it is great in this spot.
Yeah, Monastery Mentor is a 1/1 with prowess, and that's it. So it'll be Council's Judgment. And so Dread of Night's an inconvenience, but not so much that Gabriel will get rid of it. Council's Judgment will be cast. He will pick Young Pyromancer.
And I think that Alex is pretty stoked about this, as it allows him to redeploy the other Young Pyromancer in his hand. Also, this is an opportunity to wasteland the Tundra, keep up the pressure, keep disrupting Gabriel.
Yeah, but he'll do that just on end step. Go ahead and fire the Wasteland at the Tundra.
Not the best operations. Typically, you want to, you know,
do it on your.
Just draw.
Maybe
and see
you
what
need
happens,
the mana, but you probably don't.
You never know.
It's such a good play that it's almost certainly what you're doing with the Wasteland.
That's why I call it poor operations and not a misplay. I'd rather Alex wasteland at the end of Gabriel's turn than not wasteland at all. So, you know, we're above that bar, but typically you want to draw and see what's up.
All right, so we're back to Alex. He untaps with a Young Pyromancer token and a Deathrite Shaman. The token will swing in for 1. Shvachkin is down to 14. That Dread of Night keeping the Monastery Mentor in Gabriel's hand at bay. You see Gabriel will leave up the Underground Sea, use Deathrite and Volcanic Island to recast a Young Pyromancer. So as you mentioned, pretty happy to cast that after he had lost one.
Yeah, this is a really sweet turn here for Alex. It's to keep up the pressure.
And then a Ponder. You see Ponders into Red Blast and Daze. He's still weak to a top-deck Terminus, though, and I'm not sure he has a great way to solve this.
No, but at least he can cut off the cantrip setting it up.
He'll keep the Daze. We go back to Gabriel, now under a lot of pressure. 4 power and attackers, plus a Deathrite Shaman. Gabriel's draw was a Divining Top. Now he's lost 2 lands to Wasteland. He has no more mana. He'll just pass.
And Needle, the last card, or one of the last 2 cards left in Alex's hand.
Alex is going to daze the Divining Top.
This play from Alex is great. You might wonder, why is he doing this? Because right now, Alex has nothing to stop Terminus from rolling off the top of the deck. Daze doesn't stop it because he's got a blue mana up, or he's got another mana up. This way he can put the Pithing Needle on Divining Top, and instead of Gabriel getting 3 looks at Terminus, it's basically next turn or he's dead.
So here's the swing. It's for 4. Gabriel's down to 10. Pithing Needle will come into play. And Gabriel can't even tap the top here, because if a Terminus is on top of the deck, he doesn't want to draw it right now.
Yeah, that Daze play from Alex looks a little weird, but I think that play is excellent, because Daze does nothing to protect him from Terminus being on the top 3 cards.
Gabriel realizing just that, he was going to draw the card and then decided not to, so the Needle is just on Divining Top. Divining Top is in play. Gabriel's at 9. He's at a virtual 7 from Young Pyromancer, or rather from Deathrite Shaman. Wear Tear in Gabriel's hand, no red mana. Here's Monastery Mentor, that's a 1/1. That's might buy him a turn. But even then, that's a might.
Yeah.
End step, Deathrite Shaman will take care of Brainstorm. Gabriel will drop to 7. Young Pyromancer, 3 elementals in play. Here comes a Brainstorm from Alex. He's making another elemental token. Last card in hand is a Red Blast. He'll add to his hand a land, a Gurmag Angler, and the big win, a Lightning Bolt.
I mean, that bolt should cinch it up here. Not that Alex can cast it right now. He's without the Volcanic Island, but he can attack Gabriel down to essentially dead, and even if Terminus rolls off the top, he's got a bolt to finish off the game.
Yep, the last land in his hand is an Underground Sea, so he doesn't have the red mana available unless he uses Deathrite Shaman for it. But I think Deathrite Shaman's going upstairs.
I think Alex here can pretty safely Alpha Strike with everything except Deathrite Shaman. Gabriel, one assumes, will trade the Monastery Mentor for the Young Pyromancer. Gabriel falls to 4. You got Deathrite, Bolt in hand, other stuff in play. Looks like Alex is about to lock this one up.
And he may be the first player into our finals. Here are 3 elemental tokens attacking. Alex not even going to risk the Young Pyromancer. So Young Minotaur will trade with 1 token. Gabriel goes down to 5. 5 is conveniently, though, 2 from the Deathrite plus 3 from the Lightning Bolt.
It's got to be Terminus to not be dead on board, and I think Alex has got Terminus covered as well.
We go back to Gabriel. The top card, is it a Terminus? That's not even going to play. It's not a Terminus. It's a Swords to Plowshares. That's good, but it will not be enough. Gabriel trying to stay alive here. Is not going to be able to do it. And so there you have Alex Bastecki, Grixis Delver, 3 games to 1, defeats Gabriel Shvachkin. He moves into the finals and is 1 win away from our Invitational Championship and the Players Championship.
Very well navigated match there. And you know, you saw in the sideboard games the Cabal Therapy, the Pithy Needle came up as well. Miracles gets some pretty disparate draws, and it's leaning on Sensei's Divine Top, Brainstorm, and so on to clean it up.